Hello, ladies and gents. This is Mike Headley on the Headley Group Real Estate Show. This is a podcast designed for real estate professionals who's thinking about getting a career in real estate or who's already been in the business. We'll learn some great tips and tricks from the professionals and the veterans. Continue to tune in. Hey, ladies and gents, how we all doing? This is Mike Headley on the Headley Group Real Estate Show. We got another awesome episode for you. We talk about real estate all the time, which is the core of our business, the core of the show. But we have to deal with the main ingredients you need to make sure your business is successful. A lot of us kind of avoid and we don't want to deal with, and that's dealing with our financials. We got a young lady today who is talented, is well experienced in this industry. She's a CPA, and she has some real estate rental properties as well. Very knowledgeable in this space. The name of her company is called Mature Financials. And again, we was talking, I asked, we keep real on the show. I messed up her name a couple of times, but I want to make sure I get this right. So we want to give a warm welcome to Miss Olamidé, and thank you for being on the show. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now you got to say the last name because I don't want to screw it up.
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Olamidé Ewetusa, and I'm a licensed CPA located in the District of Columbia.
Love that. And we love to see us that's in that representation. And I'm quite sure that, and you can tell me better, I don't want to speak for you, is that do we make up, what's the percentage of us in that industry?
In accounting?
Accounting CPA,
so
yes.
There are actually only about 2% of CPAs are Black, which is an interesting fact. So I think in the 70s, there were only 5 Black CPAs in the entire country. There were definitely a lot of Black trailblazers that helped build that up. Back in the day, in order to become a CPA, just an interesting fact, you need experience. So it was hard for a lot of Black people to get accepted in white accounting firms. So I think that was probably the biggest obstacle back in the day for Black people to become CPAs.
Great insight on that. And that leads to my segue to say, okay, let's take it back some. And also, we want to give a shout out that she is an HBCU alum. I want to give a round of applause on that.
Shout out to the Howard graduates out there.
That's right. Listen, by the way, like I said, I told you I went A and C. So we're going to she's an HBCU alum. So we all in one big family. The CPA game, what led you? What was that itch that made you say, well, let me try this route instead of doing corporate law or going another avenue? What was that itch?
So for me, I've always wanted to be an accountant. I've wanted to be an accountant since I was like 12. Interesting fact, my name actually means my wealth has arrived. So I felt like it was kind of just always my destiny. I've always been good with numbers, always just kind of thought that way. And for me, I feel like when you get an accounting degree, you can kind of go into any industry, no matter what you want to do, whether it's sports, music, corporate, everyone is going to need an accountant. So I just felt like it was the most versatile thing for me.
I like that. So now I'm an investor, right? Invest in real estate or any kind of business that I have. I feel as though I'm okay. I'm using QuickBooks. I'm using some form of spreadsheet. I feel as though I don't actually need a CPA. My business is growing. How vital is a CPA and accountant into everyone's business?
Oh my goodness. I think a CPA and accountant is so critical to your business and to your business success. It's just one of those things where you don't realize how much you need one until you get one. The type of insight that you'll be able to get with a CPA is just going to really jumpstart your business or really take off. There are just so many different things, especially with some of my clients that I've seen, especially where I primarily work with low income Black and brown communities. So I've seen a lot of people make a lot of mistakes that could have been easily avoided. So I know people avoid like getting experts and professionals and like, an accountant or whatever, because it can be costly. But in terms of the cost savings and the potential money that you'll be making, it can really be worth it. Just different things like how to keep your net income high, but your taxable income low, different things like, is a certain deal profitable? Different things like if you work for yourself, how to set up retirement accounts, how to really manage your money. It just really can be extremely beneficial when you have an expert on your side.
I like that. So while you're saying that, I want to peel that onion back a little bit more. If Jane and John Doe have a business and they say, I want to go to come to you just for some expert advice, like, how would you gauge that? Do they need to have a portfolio ready together before you kind of actually have a conversation with them, or are they just fresh? They got an idea. Like, which part would you recommend?
Yeah, so I guess like at first of all, let me just talk a little bit about my business and kind of what we do.
Okay.
So I do have a financial services company called Pachira Financials. We offer bookkeeping, tax, financial advisory services, as well as some digital products and free resources on our website. And I originally started the company because, as you had mentioned, I kind of felt like financial literacy was really slacking in Black and Brown communities, in low-income communities, especially after I purchased my first home in Southeast DC. I just saw a lot of gentrification happening. So that was really the catalyst that made me say, why am I working in corporate America, helping these rich people get richer when I could really be working in my community? So that's kind of what we do. We work with all types of people. We mainly work with small business owners, work with people who make $50,000 a year, work with people who make $500,000 a year. So the first step is really a consultation, because not everyone has their stuff together. We work with people who don't have, you could probably don't have anything. So the first thing we do is we do a consultation. We kind of see where you're at. We see what you need to do. Some people are like more advanced, better at keeping track of their finances. Like, some people may have QuickBooks, some people may not. So that initial consultation is where we kind of discuss like where you are. Do you have a portfolio? Do you not? Do you have bookkeeping in place? Do you not? Have you filed your taxes for the past couple of years? Have you not? And then from there, we can really go ahead and find a path forward in terms of what would be the best option for you.
I like that. You mentioned real estate, right? And I think, and again, we keep it real on the show, and it was what really attracted you to us, and why we reached out. Because again, we're a real estate core show, where I want to make sure I'm getting this right here. $1 million in real estate within a certain period. Did you have a certain number that you made in real estate within a couple of years? And you say the number. Yeah,
so I was able to build $1 million real estate portfolio in 2 years.
You got to stop the press. Let's get a round of applause. $1 million in a 2-year period. You got to peel that onion back. Talk to us about that.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to break down 2 of my deals, and I'm going to use numbers just so people can really put things into perspective. And people sometimes be thinking I'm lying, and I'm like, I'm not lying, guys. It's possible. So my very first home I purchased in Southeast DC. Washington, DC is a really high cost of living area. So that's first and foremost. The homes in this area are, at the very least, 400, 500,000. So my first home, I was able to get it for $335. It was an elderly woman actually used to live in the house. And when I really started to realize gentrification was when I was putting in offers for homes, and a lot of the homes I was putting in offers for were estates, meaning that the owner passed away and the estate was trying to now dissolve the owner's assets. And what I found was that in Southeast, a lot of the old folk refuse to sell. They do not sell. That's why Southeast DC has remained predominantly Black. Well, not even all of Southeast, like parts of Southeast are still predominantly Black, because you have a lot of older folk who were like, I'm not selling my house to nobody. You know what I mean?
Correct.
But I realized that what was happening with the younger folks is that they sell it. They sell the homes. They don't want to live in Southeast. They want to live somewhere where it's closer to bars and restaurants, and this might be a bit of a food desert. So I feel like that generation of individuals who were really helping us keep our properties in our community were passing away. So anyway, that's just a side note. But so I purchased it from an elderly lady, and basically, to sum it up, I think that the main things that really helped me is, I'm gonna just disclaimer, because I don't want to feed anyone any false dreams.
Correct.
1, I did graduate with a graduate degree, and I had no student loans. So that was huge, because 1, I had decent income, and 2, I didn't have any debt. So it really helped me with being able to qualify for a home at a younger age. And so with that being said, I also was able to utilize first-time homebuyer programs, and I also was able to utilize seller assistance with closing costs. So in DC has a lot of really good first-time homebuyer programs because it is a high cost of living area. Most lower income individuals would not be able to afford to purchase a home in DC if it wasn't for those first-time homebuyer programs.
Correct.
Now, I was making decent money, but luckily my income was literally like $1,000 a year under the threshold for me to qualify for those grants, which I was really mad at my job because I didn't get the raise that I wanted, but now I look back like that was a blessing.
Truly a blessing.
It really was. So when I first saw the house, the biggest thing that really skyrocketed this deal for me was that I got seller concessions. Now I was able to get seller concessions because I always tell people the house was paid off, right? The lady who lived here before me, she lived in the house for 60 years. So they had the house paid off. And I feel like sometimes you can negotiate a little better when the house is paid off.
Question I know you keep going. Seller concessions. Break that down for a viewer who may not know what that is.
Yeah, a seller concession. A lot of people don't realize that you can actually ask the seller to pay some or all of closing costs. Now, I do want to say, because I've been getting this a lot, people like, not in this market, not in this market. My second property, the duplex, I was able to still get $5,000 seller credit. So there is kind of a way to get around that. You just have to be able to find a good deal. It's just really important to find a good deal, a property that's maybe been on the market for a long time, but you can try to negotiate a little something, like, you know, even if it's $5,000, $2,000. I think usually if seller pays closing, they pay about 3%. But just to put that disclaimer out there, we are in a very hot real estate market. It is starting to cool down. So seller concessions is not something that a lot of people are able to get in their deals, but it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't hurt to at least try.
Closed mouth don't get fed.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I heard you mention debt, right? First of all, kudos to you, and I take my hat off to you, being debt free, right? But let me peel that back a little bit. You went to undergrad, went to graduate school, no debt. Was it a lot of grants, a lot of grant writings, scholarships?
So it was a lot of scholarships. I considered myself the scholarship queen.
Okay, got you. And that's another great one for another show. I like that.
Yes, that is a whole nother thing for another show. But definitely, I targeted scholarships that were exclusive. Scholarships that were exclusive to women, exclusive to people of color, exclusive to my accounting profession. Mainly because if the easier the scholarship is to apply, the more people that apply, the less you're gonna get it. So I definitely had a whole strategy going on where I was constantly applying to scholarships. I was on my grind. You know, but you obviously also have to have your GPA high and stuff like that and able to qualify.
Correct.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, it is. That
gives me an idea to like maybe share that a little bit more on my social media about how I was able to accomplish that. Because it is possible. And I'm so against student debt. Like I would not have went to grad school if it wasn't for free. I would have said no.
Quick commercial break. If you're interested in a career in real estate or you're a seasoned vet, you might want to change. New environment. You don't like the atmosphere you're in. The Headley Group Realty could be there to assist you with your career. What do we offer? Great culture, great environment, leads, and an awesome commission structure. Let us be there to support your business. One thing, you got to be in the state of North Carolina. Let's get back to the show.
So speaking of that, and again, I don't want to dive too much into it, but you got me intrigued. What part of you, particularly at now, like I said, I don't know what age you went to undergrad and grad school. What was that light bulb click on when you said, hey, I don't want to have long-term debt. I need to come up with a strategy? Because, you know, a lot of people are not thinking that. Financial aid, hey, we take that loan out. But what made that light bulb click on for you?
Yeah, I think just growing up, I've always just kind of been good with money. I just always knew student loan debt was bad. I couldn't believe it. I mean, personally, my mom was an immigrant, so I didn't really know how to maneuver all of those things. And I think that was probably a big contributor to it. But also I had a full ride, so I only had to pay housing. So my mom did help me with my housing my first and my second year, but it was a strain on her. So I knew that I had to get a scholarship or she would want me to come stay home. And I said, that's not happening. That was a big motivator. But I saw a lot of my friends, I mean, they would take out loans for cars. They would take out loans. They were like, I just got my refund. We're going to go to this party. Like, I just thought that was crazy. I just thought it was common sense that you don't do that.
And as a result, you're benefiting now. let's talk about debt. Is there a reason for somebody to say, I'm taking this kind of debt out, whether it's a mortgage? Talk to us about good debt and bad debt. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so good debt is debt that can help you generate more income, right? Like if it's not going to increase in value or produce income, then you probably shouldn't use debt to buy it. That's period. And I think we've gotten so used to a society where we're used to wanting things now, and that's kind of the American like culture, to just like buy things now when you want it. But there are some types of debt that are good. Like mortgage is, in my opinion, can be good debt. It can be bad if you don't do it properly, but it can be good debt. My first property I purchased with only $3,000. Within a year, it skyrocketed so much in value that I was able to get a $40,000 home equity line of credit. I was able to make positive income because I was house hacking, meaning I was living in the home, but I had 2 roommates who were pretty much covering the mortgage. So then I was saving a ton of money because I didn't have to pay rent. There are just so many things that, for me, a mortgage, yes, I say like, oh, I'm debt free. Yes, I do have a ton of mortgages, but my net worth has skyrocketed. The equity in my home has been like phenomenal in terms of helping me invest in other things. And my home values have been going up, so there are certain debts like that. There are also things called like refinancing or restructuring your debt, meaning taking out debt to pay off another debt. Now, that might sound like bad, but it makes sense if you are getting a lower interest rate, right? Like, so if your interest rate is 7%, now your credit score is better, your income is higher, and you can get a loan for 2%, go ahead and restructure that loan or go ahead and refinance that loan with a different type of debt so you can use that. Sometimes people use debt to invest. So if your debt costs are 3%, but you can invest that debt in, say, your business, so you're getting a business loan and your business is going to make a larger return and your business is going to make money. Some people do that, use debt to invest in their businesses. So there is good debt to have. Like student loan debt isn't all bad. I know people who had to take out student loans because, if they had to, and now they're making $100,000 a year and they're so happy they did it. And they're like, yes, but I also know people who were excessive, took out a ton of money in debt and aren't doing great. So it really just depends on your own situation and being mindful that debt is basically like, because I look at money like time, right? Like your time is your money is your time. And I just feel like debt is you spending your future time. So I think a lot of people don't really realize that. So for me, it's like, I don't want to be spending my future time. What I'm doing right now is I'm working hard so that I can actually like live my life in the future and enjoy it. You know what I mean?
I like, something, I got this thing what I say on the show, tell it to the people in the back, say that one more time. Your money, say it again for the future.
So your time is your money and your money is your time. So when you take on debt, you are spending your future time. So
that is so crucial. So what would you say to an investor who says, hey, I'm new, just getting into the game. What's some action items should I take in terms of first-time buyer or investment property?
Yeah, so the 4 things that I tell people to look at is income, credit, debt, and cash when you're looking to get into real estate. I actually have a real estate course on my website called Pachira. Yeah, the website is pachirafinancials.com. So shameless plug. I do have a ton of digital products on there, and I have a course where I really do talk about and I break down those 4 categories. One, you want to make sure that your credit is good. You can still purchase real estate and get into real estate without perfect credit. Don't let that deter you, but it definitely helps. There are things that you can do to improve your credit. And I talk about those a lot in the course. The other thing is income and debt kind of go hand in hand because the more income you have, the more debt you're allowed to have. And that falls into your debt to income ratio. So a lot of people don't know what that is. A lot of people don't realize how important that is. You can make $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, but if your debt payments are equal to your monthly income, you will not be able to qualify for a loan. So that's really important, making sure that your income, that you make enough money to actually make the payments on the mortgage that you want to get. And also that your debt is low enough so that the bank will allow you to take on more debt, because you don't want to be over leveraged. Over leveraged means that you have more debt than you can handle. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you have some cash. Not only are you going to need cash for closing costs and down payment, but you're going to need cash in reserves in case anything happens, because purchasing a home is a big investment. It's like if you buy a car. When you buy a car, you got to think about gas, you got to think about maintenance, new tires, new brakes, all that stuff. The same with the home, but on such a larger scale.
I mean, you said it now. Again, the people in the back said income, cash. Like what did you say? The three things?
The four main things is income, credit, cash, and debt.
Cash and debt. So, okay, let's talk about that. You gave the action items. Someone says, okay, these are the things I need to be have in place. My cash is not as high. I took good care of my credit. I'm painting a scenario here. Took good care of my credit. My cash is not as high. My debt is in between. Do you recommend take on a second job or do whatever I can to increase that cash flow?
So it depends. It really depends and on so many different factors. For example, my first property, I house hacked. So I knew when I was going into buying that property that I wanted to house hack. And basically what that meant was I was paying a ton of money for my little studio apartment in Northern Virginia, which is like 20, 30 minutes outside of DC. I was paying so much money and it was ridiculous. I hated it. It was flooded. It was just nasty. It was cheap.
Wow.
Yeah. So I knew that I was like, okay, rent is your biggest expense, right? Rent is your biggest expense. So I was like, how can I get rid of these rent payments? And what I decided was that if I were to purchase a home, right? If I were to purchase a home and the mortgage were to be $1,500 or $2,000, and I were to get two roommates that were each paying me $800 to $900 each, they would pretty much be covering a bulk of my mortgage. So for me, it made sense where I was like, okay, I could actually do this and move forward, even if I didn't have a whole ton of money. I didn't have a whole ton of experience, but for me, because of what I wanted to do with the property, it made a little bit more sense. So it really depends on your location. Can you get a 3-bedroom home in your area for $200 to $300 or something in a price range that's reasonable for you? If not, then maybe reconsider. You know what I mean? So it depends on how much homes are in your area. In a 3-bedroom in DC could be $500,000 to $600,000. A 3-bedroom in Maryland could be $200,000. You know what I mean? So it really depends on those things, like the area. If your credit is so, it depends. Like how so is it? How much is that impacting? Because sometimes interest rate may not impact your mortgage payment as much as you might think in the short term. In the long term, yes. But sometimes if your credit score isn't that great, like I've seen it and I've done the calculations myself for people, it's like sis, like you're really gonna not get this mortgage because your credit isn't great, but you're only paying an extra $50 a month on it. You know what I mean? It's like, is it really gonna deter you from that? Or can you potentially refinance in the future? You know what I mean? So it really just depends on your situation. It depends on how much cash you have. Do you not have any cash, you know? And it also can dictate how you go about your negotiations. You have to stick to your guns and be willing to walk away. And I've had to do that for both of the, both my properties. I've been always willing to walk away and I've always stuck to my guns. Like if I don't got it, if I can't afford it, if it's exceeding what I have planned out, I'm not going to go for it. So it just depends on a whole lot of different factors.
And I want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. What I'm hearing beneath everything is I was willing to be uncomfortable just a little bit so I can get with later on. And I was smart enough to, and I'm actually about that as well, smart enough to have roommates come in and pay my mortgage for me. How did that conversation go? How was it? Because sometimes we're like, what am I paying that? Unless it was such a great deal. Like, how did you work that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you make them pay market rate. You know what I mean? DC is one of those places where being young, you have roommates. It's one of those places where you have roommates. I was in a 3-bedroom where I was paying $800. My roommate was paying $700. The other girl was paying $650. So that's DC for you.
Correct.
So for those who are like confused, that's just DC for you. So for me, I'm like, oh, I do this anyway. I already I have roommates anyway. People live in group homes anyway. It's a common thing where a bunch of young professionals each will have a room, or someone have a basement. So I was lucky that one of my good friends wanted to move in with me before I even closed on the house. And so that was so key, and I'm so grateful for her to this day, because I'm gonna admit I was in a little over my head. I'd never owned property. My family didn't have property. My mom's not into real estate or anything, so I was really learning as I went. And so I was able to get her, and that really helped hold me down until I found a second tenant in the basement. And then once I was able to do that, it really was just secured. So you definitely will charge market rate. It's not like you're going to be charging exuberant prices, but it is what it is. People pay that anyway. So my roommates, they were going to be living with other people anyway. So they I just put it, I put it on Facebook. I know a lot of Howard alumni in the area, a lot of Howard students in the area. So that was what I really targeted, was young students, young professionals, just looking for roommate type situations.
Question, landlord, right? Which is that's a whole nother ball game. How has that worked on your patience? And what advice and suggestions would you give someone when they actually starting to become a landlord, when you're dealing with that tenant?
So the biggest thing I will say is make sure that you are a legal landlord. A lot of people think that you can just rent out your room and that's it, but that is not the case. And I found this out because before I started renting out my house, my friend, she had a situation where someone was in one of her properties, and she couldn't get them out because she didn't have a rental license. So when she tried to go to court, and what a lot of people don't realize, you can't just put someone out on the street. In a lot of states and a lot of jurisdictions, you cannot just, if someone don't pay their rent, you can't just throw them out and change their locks. That's illegal. You have to let them stay. You have to go through the courts for the courts to issue you an eviction. And most times a court marshal has to be there to monitor the eviction. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So a lot of people don't know that. So it's very, very important that, one, you have your rental license. So if anything happens, you can go to the courts and get that rectified. I know a lot of people who don't do that. And what ends up happening is that your tenant is living in your property for free while you figure it all out. Now, what if you try to get your rental license, you have to do a rental inspection, and now you don't even pass rental inspection. Now they're saying you got to fix like $3,000 worth of stuff. Meanwhile, until you get that rental license, you can't kick that person out of your property. So they're sitting there for 7, 8, 9 months while you're trying to figure it all out. That's just like the worst case scenario. So you definitely want to make sure that you look at the rules and regulations in your state or jurisdiction to make sure that you are meeting the requirements to actually rent your space. And this is important because it allows you to then go to court if anything were to happen, or to claim for damages or losses or anything like that. So it really keeps you safe. I know in DC, I've heard of things called professional renters who target private landlords. Who are not aware of these things, and they know that it will take forever for this thing to go through the courts. And it just becomes a mess. It becomes a headache. That person's living there for free. You're probably paying their utilities. You can't rent to nobody else. It just can be a mess. So one, definitely make sure that you are legally renting your space. Another little tip is, when you are doing your inspection for your property, the inspector is not always going to look at everything that a rental inspection will look at, or like a rental license inspection will look at. Perfect example. When I moved into my house, there were smoke detectors. However, in DC, you're required to have hardwired smoke detectors if your home was built after, I think it's like a certain period of time, or if your home had extensive renovations where like the walls were down, you're supposed to have hardwired smoke detectors. Luckily, my home was built long ago, so I didn't have to meet that requirement. But if you're somebody who didn't know that, inspector is going to inspect your house, and like, that's not necessary. Like for me, if I was buying a house for my family, I wouldn't be pressed about hardwired smoke detectors. As long as I got battery operated smoke detectors, I mean, it's fine. Like you're fine. The inspector is not gonna be like, these aren't hardwired, But if you're trying to get a rental license and you're getting a rental inspection, they'll look at things like that. They'll look at things like hardwired smoke detectors. They'll look at things like, I think there's another rule where you have to have a railing on any steps that's more than 3. So I know on one of my properties, there wasn't a railing. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not gonna not buy a house. Like, oh, there's no railing. Like,
right, exactly.
But if you want to get a rental license, that's something you're required to fix. Like, just different things, like certain electrical requirements, just certain things are just different if you're renting. So if you are planning on renting your home or house hacking, make sure that you look at the inspection requirements prior to doing your home inspection so that you can give those inspection requirements to the inspector so he knows what to look out for. Yeah, so there's that.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah, so there's that, the whole like making sure you are legally renting your property is like a big thing in terms of being a landlord. Making sure that you're properly vetting the people that you are allowing to live in your property. And that goes back to like being a legal landlord, because you just don't want to run into any of those issues. I've luckily been lucky where I didn't have to run into those issues, but definitely make sure that you are renting legally. That is so key as a landlord. That's like the first thing I tell people, like, do you have a renter's license?
Well, what you got me intrigued here, because I know each state and city operates differently. I didn't know DC you had to have a rental license. I know some state rental license.
DC is actually one of the most renter-friendly like jurisdictions in the country. So I know a lot of people don't even like rent. They don't even want to rent in DC because they're like, I just don't even want to deal with all the headache.
So is it taking a course, or you just paying a fee with the city?
For a rental
license, yes.
So it's multiple steps. You have to have a BBL, which is a basic business license. So you actually have to have a business license. You have to go through the inspection process. I think you have to go through like the inspection process. You have to have a BBL. You have to pay obviously the fees for registering your business and stuff like that. So yeah, it is a little bit of a process, but it's so worth it in case anything happens. Oh, that was the other tip I wanted to say. The other tip that I wanted to mention is that file your taxes, guys, because landlords sometimes may not claim the income that they make because they think that it's gonna cause them to pay more in taxes. However, most landlords actually get to lower their taxable income by being a landlord, because once you start renting parts of your property, you are then eligible for a ton of tax deductions that you wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. Now, these tax deductions that are reserved for landlords are not reserved for homeowners. So there's a differentiation between the tax deductions that you can make as a homeowner and the tax deductions that you can make as a landlord. So like, not to get too technical, but there are a ton of deductions that you can make as a landlord. So I thought that, and I was nervous about reporting my rental income because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to pay taxes, but it actually lowered my taxable income. Once I put in all my expenses, I was like, wow, you can deduct your utilities, you can deduct your homeowner's insurance, you can deduct depreciation, which is huge and which is key to really getting that loss on your rental like income for your taxes. So definitely talk to an accountant or talk to a CPA about that, because I know a lot of people do not report their rental income, and they're probably leaving money on the table because that means you're eligible for a lot more deductions as a business owner.
Hey guys, thank you for watching our show. We're gonna interrupt you real quickly. We are in the business of referrals. If you know someone looking to buy or sell, residential or commercial, here in the North Carolina area, refer us. We really appreciate that.
You said so many great stuff. I want to peel it back in terms of with the real estate part of it. Real estate's been good for you. Like, how has it been since getting into you first purchased your property up until now that you've accumulated all this equity as well as knowledge?
Yeah, so I felt personally it's been great. Real estate has changed my life. I bought my first home because growing up, we didn't have a home. I didn't have a whole lot growing up. So for me, having a home base, was so important. Like, I don't have like a childhood home to go to or anything like that. And so that was the main thing that I wanted. I just wanted to buy a house. I never even thought I would have $1 million worth of real estate. But I feel like it's really important to be strategic, because for me, I love the area that I live in. It's up and coming. So obviously, it may not be the best, but it's the best in terms of my home value has skyrocketed.
Beautiful.
So it skyrocketed. I didn't even finish saying like how I was able to even purchase that home. I was able to get the seller to pay for renovations because the home was really old. It had green carpet, it had radiators, and that was my biggest thing. I was like, I don't want radiators. So my agent said, include that in the offer, that they have to install central air. Of course, they rejected the offer. Like, who's gonna do that? And and my agent kind of said, like, it's still a good house, you should still put in an offer. And I said, no, because I know that it's gonna be hard for me to sell a home with radiators if I decide to sell it in the future. And so that's when a week later they actually accepted the offer.
Wow.
So not only were they going to add central air, but they were also going to pay closing costs. Now, mind you, this was back then a long time ago. It was 2 years ago, but before COVID. But before COVID and before the market got really hot, and so it wasn't, it wasn't in the best spot, but they were like, it wasn't in terms of green carpet, it was old, renovated, but it did have a kitchen addition. So I have the biggest kitchen on the block, and that's what made me want to buy the property. The biggest thing is carpet can be replaced for cheap, paint can be replaced for cheap. Renovating a bathroom, renovating a kitchen, those are expensive. So for me, I felt like the bathrooms were okay, the kitchen was great. So I was like, okay, I can do this. Because they were installing central air, they had to rip up the ceilings, they had to rip up the floors to put in the ductwork. Because they had to do that, they went ahead and put in new floors, they put in the recessed lights. I mean, it looked like a brand new home once it was all said and done. Wow. So that was a really crazy deal. And I got so lucky with that. Sorry, just want to.
You're fine.
Notifications on my phone. I got so lucky with that deal. And what I realized was that not only did I get closing, the seller paid closing, so I didn't have to pay closing. Not only was it like fully renovated when I moved in, but I also had first-time homebuyer grants that helped me pay parts of closing and down payment. So once I paid my earnest money deposit, and for those who don't know, an earnest money deposit is when you put in an offer for a home, you're required to put down 1% immediately to just basically as a sign of good faith that you're serious with the deal. So I put down the 1% earnest money deposit. When it was all said and done with all the things that I was able to get with that deal, when I got to the closing table, I actually got a check for $250 and I didn't have to come out of pocket for anything else. Wow. So that home that I purchased, so another reason why I purchased that home for $335 was because my next door neighbor, they had purchased theirs for $370 back in 2016. So I purchased the home in 2019. So I was like, all right. But mind you, their home was fully renovated, like fully loaded, like an investor had purchased their home, renovated it and sold it to them. So they bought theirs for $370, which made sense, right? So mine was selling for $335, but it pretty much was fully renovated by the time I moved in. New hardwood floors, new recessed lights, new fresh paint. I mean, it looked like a brand new home. So I'm like, all right, cool. Now, mind you, that same couple that lived next door to me that I think they bought their house for $370 in 2016, they recently sold theirs March of this year for $470,000.
Kudos to them.
So
investment.
So I estimate that my house currently could be worth about $480 to $490 just because I have that kitchen addition that they don't have, and my property is a little bigger. So that was a crazy deal, and you can see how I went from $335 to $490 in a matter of 2 years. So like I think I got lucky on that deal. But there are deals out there. You got to be willing to walk away. You got to be willing to stick to your guns, because when I bought my duplex, actually this past March or April, I didn't think I could get seller's credit because I was putting in offers for home. I was going $40,000 above asking, and I was still getting outbid. Getting outbid. It was just ridiculous. And then I found a property, and it was a duplex, and it was like kind of like this really large single family home that was like transitioned, that turned into a duplex. I don't know why it was on the market for so long. I don't know why people overlooked it. Got really lucky with that one as well, because, well, she originally wanted $480. And I was like, okay, fine. Obviously, I'm not going to get seller credit because of this type of market. But I said, you know what? Bring that up to $515 and pay for closing. And that's another little trick. So she wanted it for $495. She wanted it for $495. And I said, I'll give you $515 and you pay for closing, because that's another little trick that I like to do so that I don't have to come out of pocket. Very smart. So just a little tip. But the thing about that tip though, is that you want to make sure that you're still able to pass appraisal. So what I've seen, and when a lot of people complain like, oh, well, you can never get seller's credit in this market. Well, what's happening with all those homes that are going like 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 above market, what you're not seeing on the back end is that the appraisals are not matching up. I have heard of several instances where a deal was messed up because the appraiser did not appraise the property for what it what it's selling for. And if they don't appraise the property, the bank is not going to give you that much money for the property unless the appraiser says it's worth it. Correct. So with the duplex, the appraiser actually, I told her 515, the appraiser came back, said the home was worth 460. So that was a whole nother thing.
Another nightmare.
That was about 60 days of us trying to get that appraisal readjusted, because I'm like, how is a duplex that's over 2,500 square feet? I mean, it's 4 bedrooms in the upstairs unit, 3 bedrooms in the downstairs unit, 2 bathrooms in each unit in this neighborhood where my neighbor just sold their little 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom for $470. How is this large duplex only appraising for 460? Wow. Personally, I just feel like the appraiser couldn't fathom a house in a Black community being worth so much. But long story short, we were able to bump that appraisal up to 480, right? So now the seller is going to have to come down on the price to 480 because we had already been through it. She was like, you know what, whatever. She was ready to sell it. It's been sitting vacant, you know, so she was ready to sell it. But she said she wasn't going to give me that seller's credit no more, obviously. Okay. And so my agent was like, you know, which is fair. You know, she's coming down a lot. Correct. I can't expect to come out of that. But I told my agent I'm gonna have to walk away because that's not in my plans. I don't got the money for that because my original plan was that I wouldn't have to come out of pocket for closing. Because this is my second property, I have to put out more for my down payment. Correct. So I was like, yes, I guess I just can't do it. Mind you, we had been in the process for 60 days. So the seller said, fine, I'll give her the 5,000. And there it is. So to close the deal. And then I was Airbnb-ing the property. And so I'm actually cash flowing about $1,500 a month after the mortgage is paid. Wow. And that is the benefit of having a duplex like that, is because once I could separate it into 2 units and rent it out to 2 different families, so key. So I don't know why people overlooked it. I mean, the area is still up and coming. Like I said, it's Southeast, you know, I'm still up and coming, but it is definitely cash flowing. I was Airbnb, but I'm transitioning to just getting full-time tenants. And so with that property, bought it for about 480, worth almost $500,000. Current properties worth almost $500,000, about $1 million in real estate. So technically, in my portfolio is about maybe $950,000. Wow, it's still $1 million in my opinion. Okay,
and listen, let me tell you something. You definitely light us with so much great information. Here's what we want to do. After every show, we always ask every guest to give us 2 golden nuggets, because you gave us probably about 25. Whether that be a scripture, a book, a quote, or anything, give us 2 golden nuggets we want to give to the audience.
Yeah, so my first one is stop living above your means, people. Like, that's plain and simple. Like, if you want to know how to just like live a better life, stop living above your means. You know how many people tell me to get a luxury vehicle? So many people be like, oh, you can afford this, you can afford, and I'm like, no, guys, I'm still just gonna manage myself until I'm where I want to be. You know, stop living above your means. Sometimes patience is key. Delayed gratification is so important. You don't need that Fendi. You don't need that luxury right now. Get it when you can afford it. So that's just number one. I see that all the time. I feel like that's the biggest obstacle that people have, especially in this country where debt is like king right now. Like everyone gets debt and credit cards and auto loans and student loans and car loans, you know, and mortgage loans. And it's just becoming crazy. My second biggest thing that I want to tell people, and it's just a little bit of motivation, because I don't want people to look at me and my story and think that I came from money or had parents that knew all about this, that helped me get there. I had no clue. I did everything on my own. I didn't have no one telling me. I was looking at homes by myself at like 24, 25, you know, at 24 years old. Got you. So I want people to know that wealth is attainable. You know, I grew up with a single immigrant mother. And like I said, I never even actually had a goal of owning $1 million worth of real estate because I didn't even know it was possible. I was so big on scholarships and stuff like that because I just didn't really have any other choice. You know, I just knew that I didn't want to go back to my hometown. I didn't want to go back to going to live with my mom. I wanted to like make something of myself. So I felt like I needed to do that. So to be where I am right now, to have financial stability, to have financial security, to have 2 successful businesses, to have real estate is just beyond my wildest dreams. And I hear it all the time when people think that like the system is set up against them and they just can't do it and make it. And yeah, sometimes it really is, but just always remember that wealth is attainable, and don't let anyone tell you that it is not because of whatever situation that you're in or where you were from. I work with people every day who started with nothing and make $500,000 a year, $200,000 a year. It is so real. Like when you see those people on Instagram, on social media saying like, look at what I have. I honestly, some of my clients be those people, and I'd be like, it's true, guys. It's true. This person is living their best life. So always keep that in mind, that wealth is attainable. So don't you ever think that, oh no, it's just not for me, or I can't do it. Don't let anybody tell you that. Don't ever think that. It is definitely for you, and it can definitely happen.
Ooh. Sister, let me tell you something. You've given us so much great insight. We want to thank you. And again, I want to make sure I get this correctly. In terms of the company name, I'm going to have you say your name, Tria Financials, and you are?
Olamidé Ewetusa.
Exactly, because I didn't want to mess the name up. I want to thank you for being on the Headley Group Real Estate Show. You are an alumni to the show, and we'll see you all next time on the Headley Group Real Estate Show.